Okay, welcome to Sex, Race, and Money with me, Jenny Lewis. This is a show dedicated to helping us cut through the bullshit and look at and love what is truly ourselves, our deeply complex, non-conforming, beautifully human selves. I'm here today with Amy Stanton. She is the CEO of Stanton Company. Read a little about her background so you can fully appreciate the depth of what she's bringing to us today. With a background in traditional marketing and deep experience in marketing to and building brands for women, Amy Stanton has a unique perspective on the women's landscape, the role of femininity in personal and professional lives, and the impact that unleashing our true feminine power can have on happiness. Amy founded Stanton Company with a passion for promoting and building positive female role models and messaging for women. Since 2006, when the company opened its doors, Stanton Company has built a roster of philosophy-driven brands, including exceptional athletes, lifestyle experts, and brands in healthy, active living space. Before Stanton Company, Amy served as the first ever Chief Marketing Officer for Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia and was the Head of Marketing and Communication for NYC 2012, New York City's Olympic bid, where she developed and executed both the local and international campaigns for this first ever endeavor. Amy started her career in account management at advertising agencies including BBDO, JWT, and BBH. Between her leadership roles on Fortune 500 accounts in advertising, her role as the CMO at Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia, and most recently as founder and CEO of an 11-year-strong marketing and PR agency focused on building female-focused brands, Amy has deep experience in the women's space and a wide range of relationships with powerful women who have inspired her thinking about femininity and how women can be our best. Amy has received accolades and awards from the Sports Business Journal and Women in Sports Events LA, and Stanton Company has been recognized as an industry leader. She speaks about marketing and representation, women in sports, and women's leadership. Welcome, Amy Stanton.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's quite a background you've got.
It's very challenging for me to sit and listen to people read my bio, I'll be honest with you. It's exhausting just listening to it.
Yeah, I could feel it. It's a lot to have to know that you've done all those things, you know?
It's
impressive.
Years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could feel it as I was reading the words, just how much work went into becoming the woman that's sitting here today.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us more. Tell us the highlights of that journey for you, just so we can fully appreciate all that you've learned.
Well, it's funny because I think of myself as a very goal-oriented person. But when I went to New York after college, I thought, I'll start with a job in advertising because I studied communications, and I never had any idea where that would go other than the fact that I always wanted to start my own business. So everyone in my family is an entrepreneur. I had so many incredible role models. I knew it was totally possible. And so in the back of my mind, I thought whatever I'm doing now is going to prepare me for whatever is ahead. But I didn't have a specific idea of what that business would be. And so when I listened to this whole thing, I think there have been so many serendipitous moments along the way and so many opportunities that presented themselves that I could never have actually predicted. And I just had breakfast with a friend, actually before coming here, who was telling me about this podcast she listened to. It was Russell Brand's podcast where he interviewed Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins tells a story about how Bill Clinton called him when he was 35 years old and said, I'm about to go on trial for impeachment. What am I supposed to do? And Tony said, don't ask the question what you should do. Ask the question what is it that you want? And it made me really think because I thought, my career hasn't really operated like that. I didn't actually think to myself, other than always wanting to start my own business, I didn't think, I hope I work on New York's Olympic bid. I didn't even know there was such a thing as an Olympic bid.
Right.
nor was I a New Yorker. So there were so many aspects of that were unexpected. I wasn't even sure at first it was a good idea to bring the Olympics to New York. So, and then to start a business in women's sports, I had no experience in sports. Right. I played tennis in high school, but never at a high level, let's put it that way. So I think things have happened in a very organic, serendipitous way, and yet at the same time I'm a total control freak. So I think it's funny just thinking back to sort of why one thing led to another, and I think I just showed up and I was open to the possibilities, and one thing led to another, and my background and experience is really focused on building brands, and that's the stuff that excites me. And over time I've developed an expertise but also a real passion for helping women and building brands that are built by women, building women's brands, now creating a book which ultimately is about helping women step into our power. And I don't know that I actually chose that.
Right.
So even when I think about this book, I think, wow, it's so bizarre that I wrote a book, because I always wanted to start a business. I never wanted to write a book. And yet here we are.
Yeah. Life's like that. So tell me more about the book.
So the book was really spawned from my personal experience, and I, about 5 years ago, was starting to feel like things might be out of balance, and God knows we all think about balance, and usually it's talked about in the context of work-life balance, and what does that even mean, and is that even possible? And so, but I started feeling like maybe I had developed this full-fledged work persona because I'd spent so much of my time and energy in work. And that persona might have been more of a workaholic's persona, I developed these masculine leadership skills, which were serving me for sure. My assertiveness, my directness, my confidence, and my way of doing business. And it served me then, and it still serves me to this day for sure. But I was wondering if maybe I had lost touch with, or potentially even repressed, some of my more feminine qualities, so my emotionality, my sensitivity, the fact that I cry easily, because I felt like that's what you needed to do in order to show up and kick ass in the workplace. And then I started wondering if that's why I hadn't met my guy, and why I was still, I've had some amazing relationships, and I'm so grateful for those. But I could see even in some of those relationships where I would end up being the boss again. And I didn't want to be. I wanted to totally relinquish control in certain areas of my life. And it just seemed like it wasn't happening. So I had to first start here and go, what am I doing that's creating that? And is it a part of a bigger, I guess we could call it an opportunity, which definitely was a bigger part of an opportunity. But, so suddenly I was struck by lightning and thought, I'm going to write a book, which is totally bizarre. But that was because I've worked in the women's space for many years. I started talking to tons of women about it, doing more research, understanding the power of femininity in very basic ways, but then really starting to dig deeper. And I met an amazing woman named Catherine Connors, who was introduced to me by a mutual friend of ours. And we sat down probably about 4 years ago and had this great conversation. And I remember thinking at the time, I definitely want to involve Catherine in some way when I write the book, because she's brilliant. She was an academic and then was running strategy at Disney for a lot of Disney Interactive's women's properties, including a big princess rebranding. So she had done, aside from the fact that she taught women's studies before going to Disney, she was the editor-in-chief of Babbel, a mom-targeted website. And then this Disney piece, she just had so much knowledge and so much perspective. And in some ways, I think our first conversation gave me more confidence that this was legit, because to see it from a totally different perspective, obviously I'm not an academic. And so each year I'd say, this is the year that I'm going to write the book. And for someone who is pretty focused and goal-oriented, to have something like this hanging over my head where I'm just like, what am I doing? How is this so difficult? I already had an agent lined up. I had some of the key ingredients. I just needed to write the proposal. The proposal is 60 pages, so it's an undertaking in and of itself. But
it's the first book.
Exactly. Once you've written the proposal, you're like, if I can do this, I can do anything.
Yeah.
So year after year, I would have the same conversation with myself and others. And then finally, early last year, I was sitting with Catherine and I said, let's just do this together. And in some ways, that's such a beautiful part of the story, because to do something like this with another woman and not only the sisterhood and collaboration, but also, again, to have this very different perspective and different set of skills. And she's brilliant. So it was pretty great. So we wrote the proposal, and then suddenly there was accountability, which is clearly one of the things I needed. And that certainly helped a lot too. So our agent said, let's get this proposal done. And then the publisher said, well, because I was adamant about it coming out in 2019 or 2018. That's all I cared about. And they said, fine, then you have to have it all done by January. So we had 4 months to write it, which seemed outrageous. But Catherine and I were like, oh no, we're going to do it. So we did.
Yeah.
And it came out on election day, which is totally bizarre in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I guess was also meant to be.
Yeah.
And it's been a wild journey. The premise of the book is really, we take the idea of femininity and then 21 feminine qualities ranging from emotionality to sensitivity to being a dreamer to being mothering to being agreeable. All of these qualities that society has deemed as weaknesses, or as we've been talked about in ways that make us feel less than consistently. And we're talking to ourselves that way too, by the way.
That's it, yeah.
So we take the 21 qualities, we show why they've been considered feminine and why they've been considered weak, and then we turn it on its head and show that actually each of these is not only a gift, it's a superpower. And that if we can actually embrace and be proud of and lean into our sensitivity, as an example, then we're going to be our best, most powerful, and also happiest selves. Because so much of, and this was an experience, again, that I was having and was confirmed by many other women, we're doing our best to show up as our authentic selves, but then we have all these messages from society and from ourselves that may prevent us from doing that. So we're breaking down some of those and helping women and hopefully men really ask questions about it. Why is it such a terrible thing to cry at the office? Or why is it that being a dreamer has been dismissed as this light thing when really it's the dreamers that ultimately become the doers? Because if you don't have an idea and you don't have the dream to begin with and allow yourself to do that, then how can you ever put something in motion that will ultimately create a business or a product or a book? The dreaming's where it all starts. So there's so much power in that. So ultimately, we felt like there were so many important conversations around women's rights, female empowerment, equal rights, everything you can imagine for women about women, but no one was talking about femininity. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to start a new conversation. And what I think is exciting about it, and I'm really going through the process myself on a day-to-day basis, is it's something I can do, and it starts with me.
Yeah.
I have the ability to make this transformation with myself. And if we all collectively start integrating more grace, more kindness, more love, more gentility in our day-to-day, again, complemented by the masculine qualities that are also super important, then how can that not be the most powerful thing?
Yeah, it's beautifully put. And I'm curious to hear your experience as you've incorporated more of these qualities. Has your life shifted in any way? Like what changes have you seen?
Well, it's pretty funny actually, because I feel in some ways, of course, you can't really write a book about femininity, which has a lot of vulnerability in a lot of different ways, without just going for it, you know? That just even the process of writing a book feels very vulnerable, because I know there are some people that are going to love it and some people that won't. Right. And there's some that hopefully, it sparks a conversation where some people agree with it, some people don't. And ultimately, we can communicate about that and someone learns something new. That's the ultimate goal, of course. But I definitely feel like I'm opened up in a way that maybe I haven't been. Mm-hmm. And I was on Good Morning America yesterday, which was super exciting. Mm-hmm. And it's a 45-minute interview, which is narrowed down to, in the end, probably a minute and a half of content, which still includes the host as well, the interviewer. Right. He's great. So what that means is there are only a few things that I am saying on national television, one of which is that I cried last week. They like that. So, yes, I'm literally on national television talking about crying in the office, which is perfect. It captures it beautifully. But I think that's the transformation is sharing a lot more than I normally would about myself and connecting with people in a different way. And I really also have been practicing, because we all have challenging situations throughout the day, every day. Yeah. It's not like some days they're challenging situations, especially running a business or building something new. There's just always hurdles. And we have choices, of course, of how we look at those things, which I know we're going to talk about in a moment. But in the end, I've realized that I have the opportunity with each of these things to take a step back and ask myself, and of course I'm doing this through the process of writing it and beyond, what is the most feminine way to approach this? How can I bring more grace to the situation? So if I'm going into a tough conversation with one of my employees, as an example, they're few and far between, of course. Yeah. But when it happens, which of course it does, I think to myself ahead of time, all I really care about is bringing that part of myself forward. I mean, it has to be an effective conversation that's ultimately going to result in either the change that we need or better understanding of each other. But how do I do that in a way that really feels authentic to me? And authenticity, I think, is probably the most important part of all of this, because for each woman, but also man, that would be thinking about femininity and how it's incorporated in the day-to-day, it's going to be a different equation. So the things that may resonate for me, the sensitivity, the crying openly, those may not resonate for someone else, but other parts will. And so that's been, I think, the exciting part of it, and thinking that, it's just allowing all of us to show up as we really are. Yeah. And that's the ultimate goal.
I think it's right on. I think there are a couple of really important points you made in there that I want to highlight. It's the authenticity is really important, and it seems to me that the book is really shining a light on these places that we may have overlooked in the drive to do things in a particular way, a way that we've been taught to do. There was a analogy I told you I was gonna bring up here, which you've beautifully allowed a segue into. We did it in the first episode with Dr. Habib. He told the story about the hawk and the mouse, and how the hawk is made better for having to chase a very clever mouse. If the mouse just lays over and dies, the hawk only has to pick it up and never really gets to experience its full agility, its full ability to hunt, its full range of skill, right, as being a hawk. And that mindset I thought was a brilliant analogy to showing and honoring really the women. There are many women you quote in your book. Just how life is available to us, it may seem like a challenge. It may seem unfair. I know there have been many times in my life where I'm just like, screw this. This is too hard. Or, certainly in that moment, I was like, I am never going to figure this part of myself out, and I don't really want to. And so, but that feeling of defeat, so to speak, is really the feeling of knowing that there's more inside of me, but I haven't tapped into it. I think it's this weird, like, kind of nails on the chalkboard kind of feeling in my body of, oh shit, there's another thing that I have to learn here, and I don't, it's uncomfortable. I don't know why that discomfort is there, but it may be the incongruence of the truth of who I am and where I'm at, and knowing that I can get there, something like that, holding the two ideas together. But
it requires some faith.
It requires a lot of faith and trust. And I think the story you shared at the beginning is a testament to the process of how we're held through it, even when we can't really see. Yeah.
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 It's true. And there have been many points throughout my career, but also outside of my career where I've said, I cannot imagine why this is happening right now. Or I'm not sure I can survive this, which of course we always can, but just this feeling of, oh, is this worth it?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Dr. Sadeghi always says, don't ask why. So I've gotten better about that. But I do feel like in those moments, again, when there's angst, it's all about just surrendering.
Yeah.
And just having faith that I'm going to learn something new, or this is preparing me for what's next.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful practice, really.
And it is a practice.
And it is a practice. On and on for the rest of our time.
Yes.
Yeah. So one thing I thought would be fun for us to do, in light of all that we've just spoken about, was I have here in front of us cut out the 21 chapters and 21 qualities of femininity. And I thought just in the interest of giving it up to something bigger than ourselves, as you just said, like trust and faith, we're going to pull one of these and we'll each tell a story like about ourselves, that where like there's been a time in our lives where we thought we couldn't bring this quality out, but we did, right? Or we had some experience with this quality, and it changed our lives, or it's something that we're working on opening up now.
Great.
Yeah. So you want to go first? Or
Sure.
Want me to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
Oh, sing and dance.
Oh, I love that one.
My favorite, definitely.
Yeah.
It's no surprise. That was the first. So for the reason these are each of the chapters of our book.
Right.
The reason we did a chapter about singing and dancing is because it's a great example of something that's maybe been perceived as frivolous and light and unserious. And I'm here to say it's transformative. And that I actually started taking singing lessons last year, but then in addition to that, which has been incredible, and still no one else is allowed to hear me sing. It's really for me, except for my teacher, who's fantastic, and she's quoted in the book, actually, Gita. But I started taking dance classes meaningfully early last year. And I danced as a child, never that well. Mm-hmm. And my best friend in high school was a great dancer, and so I remember thinking, oh, she's a dancer, I'm not. So like it was a very clear distinction in my mind. And granted, she had already trained a lot more than I had even at that time, but she had this natural gift, and it was obvious. So like with so many things, I have no idea why I stopped doing it,
right?
But I did. And these classes, which are this most amazing group of mostly women, but all ages, all levels, they're the greatest thing ever. And I think for me, there's no coincidence that I've literally become obsessed with dancing at the same time as we were writing this book, because it's opened up something in me that I don't think I would have been able to access otherwise. Like the sense of freedom, and also when we're dancing and learning choreography, it's really impossible to be thinking about anything else.
Yeah.
And it's so super healthy for me to be able to shut my brain down, other than the part that's needed to learn the choreography, of course, which
right.
Sometimes it's not enough brain. But it is really amazing. And also the community that's around it. So there's a very feminine experience in a lot of ways. And the surrendering of knowing that it's okay that if I don't get it, mm-hmm. There's no real pressure. It's just really there for fun. So, it's been a pretty spectacular addition. And like so many of these chapters, some things really aligned with me more easily, and some things aligned more easily with Catherine. And sometimes we would force ourselves to work on the pieces that were a little tougher. This one I really focused on, of course, because it was easy for me. But Catherine has actually enjoyed accessing this part of herself, because we did one of our launch events was a dance class.
Oh.
And it was maximum fun. I think it was the greatest. Well, I'm very biased about this, but I can't imagine a more fun book launch event. And Catherine was out there on the dance floor, and she feels super uncomfortable, but was loving it. It was like really outside of her comfort zone, but in a way where she was among this group of loved ones who were, no one was judging, and there was just a total freedom in it. So that's for me, singing and dancing.
I love that one. I think that was my favorite chapter in the book.
Oh.
I learned a lot from that chapter, and it tied into something else that I'm reading, another book, but the chapter talks about and you just said this now, is like the alignment of yourself that gets to come out as a result of letting go of the mind and just feeling into what the body wants. And I hadn't thought of it that way. I was, it just clicked in something new for me. And I'm reading this book called Time of the Black Jaguar. It's right down there on the floor. And it's a Native American book. And it actually, it talks a lot about femininity and the practice of femininity. And in that book, the revelation I had was, it talks about how, we were gods and goddesses, long time ago. And the way that we would heal each other and enlighten each other was through song and dance. And it made sense to me in reading that and thinking of it as a spiritual practice, because it does, I knew that it brought out something special in me, but the way you put in that chapter, the alignment, it really grounded in the importance of it. It rang true in my body in that book, and I'm still reading it. But when the way you put it in that chapter, it really honed in some truth for me, as a practice, a daily practice. Yeah.
Yes, I'm so glad. And one of the things we try to create a list of tools for each chapter for how you can fuel those pieces. And honestly, I say for everyone, going out and taking a dance class is a no-brainer. It may be intimidating, but they're beginner classes, they're follow-along classes, you name it. And I am hard-pressed to believe that anyone would not enjoy it.
I love doing it. I come in and out of doing dance classes. And I love to dance, and it was amazing to see that it was a spiritual alignment as well.
Well, if you need some dance class suggestions in Los Angeles, I'm happy to provide them.
I would love that. Yes. Actually, we can talk about it.
Of course.
That's good. All right, it's my turn. So I'll let you hold the slips.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to pick.
I'm going to shuffle them just in case you can.
Just in case I memorized the order. It. Put little dots on the back.
Exactly.
All right, this one is calling to me. Let's see. Oh, show your weakness.
Yes.
All right. Show your weakness. Yeah. Well, this podcast is really in practicing that.
Thank you. You're doing great.
Yeah, I think not that I'm weakly skilled in doing the podcast, but there's a lot of my life experience that I share on here that could be perceived as weak. I think probably 20 years ago I would have put lots of layers over them. Rather than show the vulnerability I'm showing here. But I really feel like there's a great power in showing and saying and telling the stories of my life. Because there's a freeness and an acceptance of myself. I think that's healing, probably on the physical level and spiritual level and soul level. But then in sharing that with other people, it gives permission, it gives freedom, it unlocks them. To be the truth of who they are, right? That's the basis of the show. And there's a lot of power in it. I can feel it now as I'm talking about it. And just really having an open and honest human experience. And that's what we're here for, right? And then we get to love each other and support each other and correct each other, help each other realign to who we know. Yeah. That they can be, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah,
it's so true. This resonates for me. I'm sure this was one of the easiest chapters for us to write, just because the whole process has been all about vulnerability, and in this case, this chapter really is about allowing people to understand the things that you perceive as your weakness. I think you mentioned it, but there's so much we're kind of shielding others from or hiding. Sometimes we're not even aware of it. And I'm not even sure there's really, in more cases than not, a real solid reason for it other than our own insecurity around it. One of my friends, Sarah Brokaw, who actually was quoted in the book as a psychotherapist, and she has a podcast called Shared Secrets, and each podcast breaks down someone's secret. I mean, something they've been hiding or uncomfortable, they've shame around, lots of shame, you know? And then they talk about it, and I'm sure there's so much positive that comes out of it for each of those people, because suddenly people can show up for them. But if we don't ever show people the weak parts of ourselves, then they think we're invincible, or they think we think we're invincible, which is a bigger issue. And you don't get to connect with people to the same degree. So I have definitely had to work on it, because I think through this whole process, the one of the easy low-hanging fruit chapters is the sensitivity chapter, because I've always been called sensitive from a young girl. And then in the workplace, Amy, you're being too sensitive. Amy, don't take things personally. This was in my early performance reviews. So what did that cause? It caused me to toughen up and build this armor and feel like I have to go in ready all the time. And that is not only exhausting, but then it prevents anyone from really knowing who I am. And now I understand through the work that we've done, but it's really proven to be true, that my sensitivity is one of my greatest gifts. It's what allows me to actually connect with people, sense what people need, sense what my clients need, understand what's happening in a meeting and what might be the best course of action based on the way that person reacted to something. Yeah. And so instead of blaming my sensitivity for uncomfortable moments or whatever, making other people uncomfortable, now I've really have embraced it, and I realize it's part of why I'm as great at my job as I am. Yeah. And so I think, weaknesses may not even be weaknesses in the end.
It's so true. I think that's a really important point. I love that you brought out the part about holding it in, and it came to me too. Like holding back all of those secrets, it takes a lot of energy.
It does.
And it's and I'm usually not met in the way, when I share those secrets, I'm usually not met in the way that, my imagination had running.
Right.
So it's really it's so freeing, and as you say, it really brings out some beautiful strengths and ability to connect with people and be supported in that way.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. You gonna do another one?
Do you want to go again?
I'll go again.
Okay.
Want me to go again?
I can't even grab the pile.
This one is sticking out.
Okay.
Be mothering. I had talked a little bit about my time in New York, and while I was managing the team, I think they would always say that I was so mothering, like over mothering. And I think, and I really, especially at that time, I saw that as a weakness for myself, working in this very like rigid masculine. I knew the support was helpful, but I really didn't know how to, I didn't have an appreciation of it on one level. And I didn't know how to, and because of that, I didn't really even know how to calibrate it. But I learned, as time went on, and my job shifted, and I got a chance to manage a team again. Like, there is a certain level of care and cultivation that when I appreciate, people around me appreciate. Like, I really needed to go in and see like the value of what I was bringing in a way that I really didn't. And that it's that reflection and mirror in time. I think that's a really important practice. And then also it's about giving people the space to learn and come back, like giving them. So it was really, there was just a gap in my experience that I got to suss out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super, super important. And should be appreciated by you and everyone else. Yeah. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately. I've actually asked my team not to use the word unfortunately anymore. It's just, what's the point of it?
That's true.
Because it's really never that unfortunate.
Right.
Especially when we use it so casually in emails.
I
digress. But Be Mothering was an interesting chapter for us because Catherine is a mother of two. I am not a mother but would like to be one.
Yeah.
And she always jokes that she's the biological mother, but I'm so much more nurturing than she is. And I have definitely here at my office with 10 female employees been extremely mothering, and mostly in a good way, I'd say, but also, that I think nurturing, if it's instinctive to us, is something we should fully embrace. And if people want to make jokes about it, if people want to feel like it's too much sometimes, that's on them, but also good for us to be aware of so that we can calibrate it. But we actually had a big debate with the publisher about this, because they said, we don't want to call it Be Mothering. It should be called Be Nurturing. But each of the chapter titles were perceived to be negatives. That was deliberate. And we're like, what's negative about being nurturing? No one sees that as a bad thing. So no, it does not work. And it was a tough one, honestly, because, and so they were afraid that calling it Be Mothering would offend women that are not mothers. And I said, if there's anyone that is an example of the person that you're afraid of offending, it's me. And so I feel comfortable we've got that covered, But it's a part of my life in a big way. I mean, I have my dog, and I have these, and my friends and my family. And, it's certainly the way I show up in the world is caring for others and taking care of people. Sometimes they ask for it, but more times than not, it's just, it's fulfilling to me.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's right. That mothering quality is something that not only women have, but men have their feminine side as well. It's a way of taking care of each other. That's important to recognize and appreciate what it means to be a mother. And I'm happy that you kept the word in. At least that's my perception.
Good.
Because then we get to look in and see if it is triggering, we get to see what's there.
Right.
Maybe there's some mothering that needs to come out. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, wants to come out.
We can do a speed round.
Do a speed round. Do one quick
Surrender.
Surrender.
Yes,
that's a good one. I knew that would come up.
Yes, I mean, we've already talked about this, of course, because it comes up almost entirely in every context as we're talking about a lot of the things we talked about today. But for me, this is an ongoing challenge in a good way. I definitely have to, in a minute-to-minute basis, realize that there's a bigger picture and that I can't control everything.
Yeah.
We also have a chapter called Be Controlling. So we're saying surrender and be controlling. Both are great. And stop beating yourself up for being both, giving in and for being controlling. So, but I read this amazing book called The Surrender Experiment.
Yes, I read it too.
I'm so obsessed with that book.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's such a simple story, and in a way, his experiences, it's just like at some point you go, how can I keep hearing this over and over again and still be completely fascinated by it? But it's such a great story and such a great reminder. So this is something I think is perfect for a speed round because it's such a simple concept, which is let go. Yeah. And I've really found, and I know we talked at the beginning about my career and sort of how things have unfolded. While I may not, I define myself as a control freak. Now I can do that in a comfortable way. I wouldn't have thought of myself as someone that easily surrenders. But then when I look at all the big life decisions, I have. So that's why, in a way, it's not just about surrendering in the stuff that's easy. It's about surrendering in the big picture and just having faith that we're in the right place at the right time and knowing that this is exactly the conversation I should be having at this very moment in this very place. And that's a wonderful thing. So it's something I think a lot of us struggle with, but it's an easy one to just start to integrate in the day-to-day.
That's, yes, beautifully put. Beautifully put. It's all for us and our fortune.
Yes.
Yeah, nothing is unfortunate, as you said. It's great. I love it. So I think after now that we've done our rounds of things, what we can do, I think how I wanted to end this was just to remember and honor, the work that you've done here, that we've shared together, you know, the lives of our listeners and ourselves, and really see that, you know, there's just so much to being human. There's so much to being feminine, to being a woman. We did talk about, you know, femininity being a part of a man too, but really honoring the woman. And so I wanted to read from another book that I've read. It's called The Tantra, The Cult of Feminine, just to remember, like, and as I read this, like, I always think about the beauty of that hawk that's hunted many times and has really found the grace and agility of what it truly means to be a hawk, and really to honor the journey that it took to be there for all the people, the women listening who are at a place where it feels like nails against a chalkboard, which we all come back to again and again as we learn. Just remembering the beauty that it's opening up in us, and I thought that was well put here. I'll read it. Woman is the creator of the universe. She is the very body of the universe. Woman is the support of the three worlds. She, the very essence of our body. There is no other happiness as that which woman can procure. There is no other way than that which women can open to us. Never there has been, there is, there will be a fortune the like of a woman. No kingdom, no place of pilgrimage, yoga, prayer, mystic formula, asceticism, wealth. Tantra believes that first and foremost, woman must emerge from the woman. She must become aware of what she really is, and she must integrate that awareness into the way she views herself in the world as it becomes part and parcel of her life. And today we just honor that journey. It's been an honor to be here with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
To learn from you, to have this conversation, to share our lives together. Yeah, and it's just beautiful. I mean, we've talked about many things: vulnerability, weakness, the journey, and just continuing to move through and open, you know, to the truth of who we are with integrity and alignment to ourselves, and getting support in that too. Knowing that it is all here for us as we surrender in. Yeah, and I thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you. It was a real treat.
It was, yeah. So if you'd like to hear more from Amy and learn more about her company, you can find her at stanton-company.com. And as always, you can find me at jlulive.com. And just remember, as always, the beauty of yourself.